In 1889, this photo was taken. Look at the expression of the people in the background, then look at the expressions of the individuals in the water. An odd and disturbing disconnect between the two groups of subjects, almost as if these people were not humans, but rather animals. However, this photo was in fact part of a larger operation during the late 19th, 20th century, which was coined the name the human zoo. But to understand this bizarre phenomenon, we have to go back to 1851 when a book by an American author was published. What contained in the book was one of the first accounts of the most corrupt scientific philosophy called social Darwinism. So, what exactly is social Darwinism, and how did it cause one of the most disturbing events in history? Imagine it's the middle of the 19th century. The world is buzzing with new inventions and ideas. Among these was Charles Darwin's game-changing theory of natural selection. The idea was simple. Organisms better adapted to their environment were able to survive and produce more offsprings. This allowed only the animals with the strongest genes and adaptations to survive. But what if this philosophy was applied to human society? Well, this is where Herbert Spencer's ideology of social Darwinism comes in the picture. The idea was that certain classes, status, power, and races were superior to others, or to say that they were better adapted. Through very unique, interesting, and totally not biased experiments, it was concluded that white European folks were the peak human race. You see, the world was a whole different place during this time, as white Europeans went on a rapid rampage of colonization everywhere imaginable. From the west to the east, from the south to the north, nowhere was safe. So, you can expect how something like social Darwinism will convince millions of people that what they were doing was justified. Why wouldn't you believe you are more superior when science literally proves it? Plus, you're just helping other people, right? But before the world even realized the effects of this sinister ideology, it was already too late. As the moon faded and the sun arose, tens of hundreds of human zoos were created to feed the entertainment of millions of white Europeans who were indoctrinated by the ideology of social Darwinism. The first sightings of human zoos were in 1874, then in 1889, 1893, 1904, and many more to come. Indigenous, Africans, and Asians were all among the many races displayed in these zoos. Their homes were destroyed, and their families were separated. Few countries were lucky to escape, but many were unable to. One of these nations that were affected by the human zoo was the Congo Free State, where a man named Ota Benga was born. Although Ota's life is still mainly unclear, we know he had a pretty normal life, in a peaceful community, nestled in the Congo Basin. That is, until Ota Benga's life was violently disrupted on a fateful morning where loud gunshots of an attack could be heard. A group of African slave traders, armed with rifles provided by Europeans, had targeted the village. Ota, in the midst of the chaos, tried to shield his family. He grabbed his children and urged his wife to run towards the dense forest where they might find cover. As his family ran towards the forest, a single gunshot could be heard. Ota, to his horror, saw his wife shot dead. Strapped to her back was the youngest child, crying out in fear and confusion. He knew he had to protect his only remaining child as he clutched his son tightly and ran towards the forest, hoping to lose the pursuers in the thick bushes. We all love stories with a happy ending. This was not one of them. None of his family members survived. One day, Samuel Phillips Werner, an American businessman, came by to look for exotic humans to be displayed in his exhibition. He stumbled across Ota Benga, who he bought for a pound of salt and a bolt of cloth. Ota lost his freedom that day and was then displayed in the Louisiana Purchase, which was one of the first ever human zoo. Individuals from Africa, the Philippines, and other regions were displayed to perform stereotypical performances for the amusement of others. This wasn't even the worst yet, because in 1906, Ota Benga would be displayed in the most infamous and degrading exhibit ever. Ota was trapped in the Bronx Zoo of New York City, where he was housed in the monkey house, sharing a cage with a monkey. He was encouraged to perform tasks that were meant to depict him as primitive, from using bows and arrows to dressing up as a caveman. Ota's display became increasingly more popular as it drew large crowds of people. What many didn't know was that the zoo manager displayed Ota Benga as one of the missing links between apes and human. This idea of apes to human is the same wicked ideology rooted in social Darwinism, the idea that certain races were more underdeveloped than other. This directly justified such events like the human zoo and many other horrific events. In fact, Krao Farini, an Asian girl from Laos and another victim of the human zoo, was promoted as the missing link during her exhibition. After backlash from different communities, Ota was finally released into public. Because of Ota's popularity, he was able to be released, but many minorities were not. People just didn't care enough for them. This story does not have a happy ending. I wish I could say Ota was released eventually and lived a happy life in America. But that is not what had happened. On March 20th, 1916, around 10 years after he was released from the zoos, without any friends, family, and dignity, Ota Benga died at the age of 32. I can't explain how he exactly died due to YouTube's policies, so I have linked some resources in the description. The extent of Ota's story doesn't just end with the human zoo. It leads into a broader historical and societal issue that has persisted for decades, the effects of which can still be seen today. Sadly, Ota's story is just one of the thousands of people that were affected by this. These people's stories will never be heard again and will be forgotten in history as schools and society fail to mention any of this. However, for people who are actively seeking the truth every day, we understand that history like this repeats. In fact, just 25 years later, the same story was repeated again during World War II with the rise of fascism. Society will forever try to cover up events like this. And although it is wrong to concentrate too much on the past, it is important to understand the philosophical side of history, as it is bound to repeat again. Thank you for watching all the way through.
Know your way.